Hello, and welcome to Chapter 2 of Global Business. In this chapter, we're going to discuss international trade and foreign direct investments. Within international trade, we're going to discuss several classical theories on international trade, as well as several modern theories around international trade. Before we get into the different theories, we need to establish the fact that trade has evolved over the years and decades and centuries, mainly due to the fact that as political and legal parameters develop over time and evolve in each country, and as well as how technology has advanced the way we can manufacture and create products and services, the way we trade has also evolved because of these macroeconomic factors. So, as we start to talk about the different theories of international trade, it's important to keep in mind that some of the core elements of historical theory still have some merit to how trade is conducted today. However, there are pieces of it in the classical historical context that do outweigh the fact that they're not as relevant as they once were. Let's get into the international trade theory. Before we get into the different types of theories, let's just discuss what international trade theory is in its core. International trade theories are simply different theories to explain international trade. In a general business context, trade is the concept of exchanging goods and services between two peoples or entities. Pretty straightforward trade definition there, but when it comes to international trade, it's then the concept of this exchange between people or entities between two different countries. People or entities trade because they believe that they benefit from the exchange. They may need or want the goods or services. While at the surface this may sound very simple, there is a great deal of theory, policy, and business strategy that constitutes international trade. So again, the complexity of international trade is much more than just the exchange of goods and services between two entities. It involves many policies, theories, but what we discussed also in Chapter 1, the political, cultural, and legal dynamics that really evolve when it comes to doing business internationally. So in this lecture and in this chapter, you'll learn about the different trade theories that have evolved over the past century and which ones are most relevant today. Additionally, you'll explore the factors that impact international trade and how businesses and governments use these factors to their respective benefits to promote their interests. So there are two different buckets of international trade theories. There's the classical country-based theories and the modern firm-based theories. Classical country-based theories are basically more historical in nature and were developed many centuries or decades ago to describe the way that theorists and business individuals believed international trade was designed based on the current time in which they were conducting international trade. Mercantilism, absolute advantage, comparative advantage, and Hescher and Olin are four theories that we're going to take a look at here in a little bit more detail in this lecture. Then we'll go into modern firm-based theories, which are more relevant in today's global business environment, but still have various pros and cons of each of the theory depending on the type of business trade that's being conducted. One thing to note, though, that in classical country-based theories, there is some core elements of each of those theories that still exist today. The first classic-based theory we're going to take a look at is called mercantilism. This was developed in the 16th century. Mercantilism was one of the earliest forms to develop an economic theory. This theory stated that a country's wealth was determined by the amount of its gold and silver holdings. In its simplest sense, mercantilists believed that a country should increase its holdings of gold and silver by promoting exports and discouraging imports. In other words, if people in other countries buy more from you in exports than they sell to you in imports, then they have to pay you the difference in gold and silver. The objective of each country was it to have a trade surplus, or a situation where the value of exports are greater than the value of imports, and to avoid a trade deficit, or a situation where the value of imports is greater than the value of exports. Quite frankly, if you look at it back in the 16th century and around that time frame, gold and silver were the primary measures of exchange. Money necessarily wasn't a heavy capital. If you think about that during that time frame, gold and silver was what really measured a company or individual's wealth. Mercantilism today wouldn't be as prevalent of a theory because gold and silver are not necessarily the only means of exchange. Exchange is a monetary value now with different types of monetary names and exchange values in international trade. However, people look at it from a dollar perspective versus gold and silver. Gold and silver was the primary method of exchange and value of wealth back in the 16th century. If we take a closer look at world history from the 1500s and to the late 1800s, it helps explain why mercantilism flourished, though. The 1500s marked the rise of new nation states, whose rulers wanted to strengthen their nations by building larger armies and national institutions. By increasing exports and trade, these rulers were able to amass more gold and wealth for their countries. One way that many of these new nations promoted exports was to impose restrictions on those imports. This strategy, called protectionism, is still used today. If you think about trade today in an international sense, you think of tariffs, you think of regulations, you think of things that still have to be binded, somewhat contractual agreements between countries when it comes to imports and exports. That's where protectionism is still used today to basically protect a country's best interests when it comes to the products that they're exporting and or importing. Mercantilism is not necessarily a extinct theory, it's just components of it are not as relevant as they once were. Another historical theory that developed back in the 1700s was this idea of absolute advantage. In 1776, Adam Smith questioned the leading mercantile theory of time in the book The Wealth of Nations. Adam Smith, An Inquiry into the Nature and Cases of Wealth of Nations. Recent versions of this book has been edited by scholars and economists. However, regardless of the modification of the books, this theory in 1776, and if, as you can recognize, 1776 is an important year to the United States of America, and I'll let you understand why. But it's very fascinating that the same year a historical thing occurred in the United States, a theory called absolute advantage was developed. Recent versions of this, though, have said that the new trade theory called absolute advantage focuses on the ability of a country to produce a good more efficiently than another nation. Adam Smith reasoned that the trade between countries shouldn't be regulated or restricted by government policy or intervention. This is a very unique theory. This is a very big ask as well of Adam Smith. For no country to have any regulation or government intervention in a trade could open up an open market of somewhat, you know, uh, a free market that has products that aren't being met to the standards of the culture or the environment to which they're coming in. It allows for no checks and balances to take place. This is a very big ask with the absolute advantage. But Adam Smith's reason for this was he stated that the trade should flow naturally according to market forces. In a hypothetical two-country world, if country A could produce a good cheaper or faster, or both, than country B, the country A had the advantage and could focus on specializing on producing that good or product. Similarly, if country B was better at producing another good, it could focus on specialization as well. By specialization, countries would generate efficiencies because their labor force would become more skilled by doing the same tasks. Production would also become more efficient because there would be an incentive to create faster and better production method to increase the specialization. This goes for competition as well. The advantage to this theory is that if a country has the best mechanism to operate and produce a product faster, less expensive, then they should be the primary country of trade to trade that product or good. There's benefits to this. The benefit is that it's consistent, that a country can flourish within that product, but it doesn't offer for fair competition or a free international trade enterprise where there's equal competition. Those are some of the disadvantages to this theory called absolute advantage. Another historical theory, but more recent in time, was developed in 1961 by a Swedish economist named Stefan Linder. He developed a theory called country similarity theory. He tried to explain the concept of intra-industry trade. Linder's theory proposed that consumers in countries that are in the same or similar stage of development would have similar preferences. In this firm-based theory, Linder suggested that companies first produce for domestic consumption. When they explore exporting, the companies often find that markets that look similar to their domestic one in terms of customer preferences offer the most potential for success. Linder's country similarity theory then states that most trade in manufactured goods will be between countries with similar per capita income, and intra-industry trade will be common. This theory is often most useful in understanding trade in where brand names and product reputations are important factors in the buyer's decision-making and purchasing process. Think about Nike. Nike is a brand that's very global. Nike can fit into the cultural context of just about most nations that embrace that brand and what that brand stands for. The brand stands for athletics and also has very environmental, sustainable uh, reputations within that country. This theory does have some merit. It's an easier achievement at times, while a lot of work to be done for a company that can take their brand reputation and take that to a global market if they already have an affinity in that market. There are times where brands are just known in a foreign market but aren't being sold there. Our business is not being conducted there, but individuals of that foreign market definitely have an affinity and an understanding of that brand. Common cultural aspects of a foreign market to another can also help a company do business globally or internationally in that new market. So the similar cultural or political or even just brand affinity dynamics in this country similarity theory does have some merit. More forward-thinking, product life cycle theory. Raymond Vernon, a Harvard Business School professor, developed the product life cycle theory in the 1960s. The theory, originating in the field of marketing, stated that a product life cycle has three distinct stages. One, the new product, the introduction of that product and the launch of it, its newness to the market. Once a product is introduced to a market and it's brand new to individuals, it has a mature phase. It matures over time. Anything that you see come to market has a maturity phase. It's new, it's exciting, and then it matures, it gets settled into the market, and it either goes up in popularity and sales, or it can start declining over time. Then there's the standardization of a product. The theory assumes that the production of the new product will occur completely in the home country of its innovation. In the 1960s, that was a useful theory to explain the manufacturing success of the United States. U.S. manufacturing was the globally dominant producer in many industries after World War II. What this means is that if a country of origin is the one to start producing and manufacturing a product, it would have been thought that the product, if a long-lasting product would be developed, it would be developed in a continuation and repeated pattern from that original country, and that it would always be made and produced from that host country, but being traded and exported across foreign markets. Product life cycle theory is a very unique merchandising and marketing theory as well that still exists today. It's something that anybody who sells, buys, or works in a area of manufacturing products would understand. Products are new to the market. They mature, they either get revamped with a new version of it, or they just become static in the market. It's important to know, though, that a manufacturing of a product can shift from one country to the other. And we've seen this, especially when it comes to global trade or global manufacturing, where a company could outsource the manufacturing of a product because they find the production costs and the cost of materials of that product to be less expensive somewhere else. So while this is a unique theory, it doesn't always hold merit though, because at times, just because a country is producing a product or manufacturing it and is known for that, a company has every right to outsource it and go to another country to make it cheaper, better, and faster. Another theory is called global strategic rivalry theory. This is very much in regards to competition. So there are many facets to this theory, and a big part of that is the barriers to entry. Barriers to entry a market or a foreign market have many things to be considered. If a business wants to go into a foreign market, there are barriers to entry they have to consider. Research and development, the ownership of intellectual property rights, economies of scale, unique business processes or methods, as well as extensive experience in industry, and the control of resources or favorable access to raw materials. Let's go through each one of these. Research and development. At any point a business wants to go into a foreign market or expand internationally, there must be an R&D department or team to go out and do research to understand how that business will expand into that foreign market. They need to understand everything we've talked about before in chapter 1 of political, cultural, economical, and all the dynamics that are involved when it comes to doing business in that foreign market. Once they do the research and find out all the information that's possible, then a plan needs to be developed in how a business is going to be brought into that foreign market. That's a barrier to entry. It's very basic business 101 research, but very much more detailed when it comes to doing global business. The ownership of intellectual property rights. Now, this is interesting. If you're doing a business venture where you're going to take your product to a foreign market, generally that host country or business has the intellectual property rights. However, just because, for example, in the United States, you have an intellectual property right, there could be something similar in some kind of patent or intellectual property right in another country that's similar. You have to understand. You have to understand if you're competing with any other intellectual property rights in that foreign market. And if you're taking your own intellectual property rights or patents of your product to a foreign market, you need to make sure that you protect yourselves as much as possible with all legal parameters, that no one violates or breaks the intellectual property rights of your own product. Economies of scale. One big barrier to entry is to understand the economy, but also how vast and how big your opportunity really is. You need to do this through financial and part of your research and development phase. You need to optimize the economies of scale and truly understand your foreign market and all avenues of how you're going to market and sell your product. Unique business processes or methods, as well as extensive experience in industry. You may have a great product or idea, but to go to a foreign market and do global business, you need to make sure you have either consultants or something or someone, on your team that can really give you that international business advice on how to do business internationally. Experience is key, and that is what's going to help anybody negotiate and to expand their business globally. The control of resources or favorable access to raw materials. Anybody looking to manufacture in a global environment wants to have the access rights to raw materials. You want to be able to rely on your own management of access to these resources or raw materials because of cost control, but really just primary ownership to ensure that the production and productivity and output of your business is being met. This can be challenging though if you do rely on a distributor or other company or factory to be the one that has control over the access to raw materials. This is why it's very important to understand and establish yourself with all the research you can obtain from the very beginning. The last international trade theory we're going to take a look at is more relevant in time. It's Porter's National Competitive Advantage Theory. Now, if you've ever studied strategic management or strategy, you might be familiar with Michael Porter. Michael Porter from the Harvard Business School is a very well-known scholar and business practitioner in regards to identifying many common strategic and or business principles and theories that are used in today's business world and also business schools. In the continuing evolution of international trade theories, Michael Porter of Harvard Business School developed a new model to explain national competitive advantage in 1990. His theory stated that a nation's competitiveness in an industry depends on the capacity of the industry to innovate and upgrade. His theory focused on explaining why some nations are more competitive in certain industries. To explain his theory, Porter identified four detriments that he linked together. The four detriments are: 1. Local market resources and capabilities. 2. Local market demand conditions. 3. Local suppliers and complementary industries. And 4. Local firm characteristics. Let's talk about each of these four detriments or pillars of Porter's theory in more detail. Local market resources and capabilities. When a business is looking to expand globally and conduct international trade, they need to understand the local market resources and capabilities. They need to identify what the strengths and weaknesses are of that market they're going to go into. What are they capable of doing to broaden my business further? What resources can I tap into to expand my business? But also, you need to understand what other avenues of resources or capabilities that they do not have in order for you to invest in areas to enhance those resources or capabilities to conduct your business successfully in that foreign market. A business needs to understand the local market demand conditions. Now, generally, a business will identify the demand when they decide to go into a new business. But when it comes time to talk about international trade, there needs to be some type of demand outlook for that foreign market. Even though there may be a demand for a product now, what is the long-term sustainable advantage of doing business in that foreign market? Will there be a demand for a long period of time? Will the demand be continuous or only during certain parts of the year or seasonality? Are there other factors that are going to impact the demand that you need to consider whenever doing international trade with that foreign market? These and other market demand variables are what Michael Porter says are important to consider whenever doing international trade or business. A business needs to understand the foreign market's local suppliers and complementary industries. Just as you would in your own country identify the basically suppliers that are available to you, you'd want to understand what suppliers in that foreign market can help you bring your products to market. And what industries are adjacent that you can work with to maybe partner with to offer value-added services or other areas to augment your current product. And finally, but quite frankly, one of the most important is the local firm characteristics. If you're going to do trade with another business, you want to know everything about that company, their mission, their values, maybe their company culture, but in general, how do they operate? What operational elements are going to help you understand how to do trade with that company? Do they match your operational plan? Do they match your operational efficiencies or capabilities? Do they not? And if they don't, how are you going to augment or broaden your business structure in order to meet the needs of that international company? These are all key questions and key areas you have to understand whenever you're doing business internationally. And Michael Porter's theory of competitive advantage is key areas for you to make those decisions. The second part of this chapter we're going to discuss is called foreign direct investments. Foreign direct investment, or FDI, is an investment made by a firm or individual in one country into business interests located in another country. So it's basically the same thing as doing an investment in your home country. An investor invests capital or money into a business and generally looking for some type of ownership or share of that business or some type of ROI in their investment. When it comes to a foreign direct investment, it's basically taking that investment into an international entity. Generally, an FDI takes place when an investor establishes foreign business operations or acquires foreign business assets, including establishing ownership or controlling interest in a foreign company. Foreign direct investments are distinguished from portfolio investments in which an investor merely purchases equities of foreign-based companies. You see this a lot with large companies or investors. They invest in a global business for many reasons. One, it establishes that brand or company's product into that foreign market to expand globally. Two, at times an investor will invest into one business just to get into that foreign market and build relationships so another venture of theirs could be easier to negotiate and enter into that market. For example, an investor may invest into a fishing supply company into a foreign market. After some time, and that, let's say, there's a successful relationship between the foreign market and that investor may have an easier time to go into that same foreign market and invest into another company because he already has established business relationships in that foreign market. International business relationships are very important. It makes investing a lot easier for someone who already has established credibility and equity in that country. And it doesn't always have to be an investment into a business, it could be in assets. Part ownership of a software that's going to be a major software for many companies in that foreign market. For example, someone could find that they want to invest into a SaaS or a software company that's going to be a major software company to many different types of businesses in that foreign market. Therefore, it's important to understand what type of investment is taking place. There are definitely advantages and disadvantages when it comes to some business or an investor conducting a foreign direct investment. Let's first look at the advantages. There are improved capital flows, which that means is there's an enhanced cash flow or revenue generating opportunities that just basically makes more profit, more money for that investor or business. So by going to a foreign market, you open up a whole new um, audience of customers that really can acquire your products and services, which really increase your cash flows. Technology transfer, as we talked about in the last slide, there's an opportunity to take a technology that an investor or business really believes in and expand it globally. You can take that technology that you like and bring it into your own country if you want. That's important to understand though that technology is as it evolves and makes global business more complex, there's a lot of competition too. So the advantage is yes, you can expand technology globally if you invest into it, but there's also a disadvantage because of how competitive it really is. Regional development is another clear advantage to conducting an FDI. You can develop your investment into it. When we think about this, it's not always country to country, it's usually a region of a country. Think about the United States. When a international company wants to come into the United States, they may start small and be regional. They may start in the Northeast and then branch out to the Southeast And then if they actually make a well-known reputation of their brand or product or service, they may expand nationally. So there's a regional development aspect that really has an advantage to an FDI. Another FDI advantage is increased competition that benefits the economy. Anytime you do international trade or expand globally, you are providing another competitor in that industry. Competition is healthy. It gives customer options. It gives customers a sense to compare and contrast a brand or product or business from one to the other. So that can definitely benefit any economy because it does not allow for monopolies to take place. Another advantage of an FDI is favorable balance of payments. Basically, in this essence, an investment could definitely have a repayment structure that is beneficial to both the investor and the business. And of course, anytime there's new business opportunities or new businesses in a foreign market, it does create employment opportunities for the local community. Now, let's take a look at the disadvantages of a foreign direct investment. At times, there are low levels of research and development. There's at times when a investment takes place in a foreign market, in a foreign business, there's some companies who don't do enough research and development to really understand what the potential variables and challenges are going to be. So they get into it too quickly or invest too much money in the onset, and therefore could struggle with a long-term business, sustainable business. There's a risk of increased capital outflows. Just because you're making money, you know that you have to spend money to make money. So your investment could get uh, more competitive down the road if more competition develops, the cost of materials increase, the cost of resources. An initial investment is not the last time an investor really will invest into a company. Something goes wrong in the business, they are held liable as a shareholder of the company to invest more, and that could cause a risk of outflow of cash that wasn't expected in the beginning. Another disadvantage is the stifling of domestic competition and entrepreneurship. So, especially in large businesses that go globally, it can definitely impact that country's ability to have more small business owners, develop their own small business around that type of industry. Think about, for example, restaurants. If a major chain goes global and they start working with international foreign markets, well, those small business owners of those local, you know, restaurants could really have some, clear disadvantage to a larger, well-known restaurant chain. Erosions of host culture. So at times when you go into a new business internationally, unless you do it well, the culture could be shifted, or dynamics of the culture could be really questioned whenever you go into a new market without understanding all the impacts. Disruption of domestic business practices. This is also something you have to keep in mind, that a disadvantage of an FDI is if it's not done well, it can disrupt how business is already being done in the international market. So if you're coming in as a foreign entity, you want to make sure you're not totally disrupting the current business market that you're coming into. And of course, like any other type of international business element, whether trade or just doing business internationally in general, there's a risk of interference by foreign governments. You have to be willing to take the risk when you go into business globally that a foreign market may want to get involved, and laws could be developed to really be challenged for your business, especially if you make an investment in a foreign market. Foreign governments have control over their countries, so therefore your investment into that foreign country and market um, does have some variable impact based on the foreign government laws that take place or changes in the government. So, what makes companies want to invest? There are a variety of things that make companies want to invest, and this is discussed in your textbook. And these are primary the main ones, but there's others out there that do exist, of course. But these are the ones I definitely want to make sure we cover because in essence, every company wants to invest in general. And this isn't just to invest internationally. This is also why, in general, people invest into a business, even in their domestic country, but especially in foreign markets. The first one is cost. And these are the kinds of questions you ask yourself whenever you're looking to invest. When it comes to cost, you're asking yourself, is it cheaper to produce in the local market than anywhere else? So basically, can I produce this product cheaper in my market or in a foreign market? You see this a lot with outsourcing and manufacturing, where companies will go outsource internationally to a foreign market to produce their product because often they can find the materials cheaper and the production cheaper. Just as logistics, can I operate and produce these products cheaper, but also get them transported cheaper to the business markets that I'm in? The market itself, is the market I'm in being optimized? Do I have the right customer mix? Or are there other customers out there in the foreign markets or other countries that really would adopt the products that I'm offering? Natural resources. Are the resources that I have at my exposal here in the current country I'm in going to suffice the business needs and demand that I need to meet in the long term? So you need to ask those questions. Know-how. Does the company want to access local technology or business process knowledge? So do you want to invest because of just the sheer fact that you don't have the expertise in the current business model? You find that there's an attractiveness of a current business or company that has the expertise in an area that you really need to excel in, or just want them to take over because they have the key knowledge on how to conduct that business process or technology, especially when you want to invest into technology. At times, it's easier, instead of developing yourself, is to acquire a new company or a business that has a technology that can really, strengthen your business portfolio. Customers and competitors. Do you want to invest into a business because there's an untapped customer base, and or you really want to make sure that you're looking at the competitive landscape as well? Are you going to invest because of a policy that a company adheres to and does really well? Policies are important, especially in foreign international business trade. You may want to invest in a foreign business because they have their policies and they exist, or they exist, and also you are able to understand that they have a well documented policy and follow it through thoroughly. The ease. Basically, is it easy to do business with this new company or venture? Will the investment just be a seamless transaction where you get an ROI immediately and long term, and there's really no other reason why not to do it? The culture. Perhaps you want to invest into a business that has a specific organizational culture that you believe in and you want to be a part of. A business impact. Do you want to invest into a business because they're making an impact on society, on the environment? Do you believe in their mission and what they're trying to do with their product? You may just want to invest because you want to be a part of something that's different. The exasperation of funds. Can the company easily take profits out of the country, or are there local restrictions? Are the kinds of questions you need to ask about that. And then an exit. Can the company easily and orderly exit from the local investment, or are the local laws and regulations cumbersome and expensive? So if you need to get out of the business venture, what are your rights around that? Is it easy to get out of? Are you held by more of a binding agreement than when you originally knew you were going to get into? These are factors that influence why a company would invest either nationally or, in most cases, especially in this course, globally. These are factors that are very much why you would invest into a foreign direct investment into a foreign market. That's all I have for you today. I do appreciate your time in reviewing this video lecture. Hope you learned a few things about international trade theory and foreign direct investment. And I will reconvene with you in the next chapter. Thank you.